Act 1. Hook. Right up front. Listen, the silence in that cabin wasn't peaceful. It was full of fear. 17-year-old Jasmine Cole was slumped against the front bulkhead, wrists bruised where plastic restraints bit into her skin chest, barely moving, and everyone in first class froze because the person standing over her thought she'd just robbed the wrong airline. That assumption that look is what this whole story is about, and it's small in the moment, but it explodes into something no one on that plane could have predicted. I want you to picture it. Miami to Barcelona, flight 417, 2 hours from takeoff, the cabin warm with perfume and expensive cologne. The purser, Linda Carver, prided herself on keeping first class pristine. She wore a pressed navy suit, a smile like varnish, and a rulebook thicker than her passport. Jasmine walked down the aisle wearing a faded hoodie, ripped jeans, and a backpack full of soldering kits and energy bars. She'd been at a coding marathon for a scholarship, had been awake for nearly 2 days, and all she wanted was to sit down and close her eyes. Her boarding pass said 1A. Her phone said 1A. The system in her dad's corporate account said 1A. Linda didn't scan it. She scoffed loud enough for people to look up from their iPads. "Honey, 1A is reserved." "It's a suite," she said, voice sweet with invitation and barbed with judgment. A businessman in 1B smirked, the kind of smirk that assumes the world works exactly how it benefits him. Jasmine didn't argue. She handed her phone over. Linda grabbed it like a trophy, like proof to be inspected, because sometimes people want excuses to be certain they're right. Linda said the QR looked fake, that kids Photoshop these things now, and instead of checking, she decided. "Move to economy," Linda said, and when Jasmine tried to step past Linda, put a hand in the aisle, a small, deliberate block, like a bouncer at a club deciding who gets in and who doesn't. Jasmine's chest tightened. She was asthmatic, sleep-deprived, and dizzy. She reached into her pocket for her inhaler. That little move reaching for medicine was the hinge. Linda screamed that Jasmine had reached for a weapon. The air marshal, a man named Tom Briggs, came forward, puffed up with the authority he'd been trained to carry like armor, and in a heartbeat the hallway turned violent. Tom shoved Jasmine to the floor, pinned her, and cinched plastic restraints until they cut into her wrists. Passengers shouted. Someone yelled, "She's a kid," but in the chaos, Jasmine stopped breathing. She went limp. Act 2. Struggle and turning point. You can't describe that moment without the sound, the dull, sickening thud when a body hits the floor. The murmurs turning to horror, the unmistakable sound when breath leaves a person and doesn't come back easily. The crew had decided she was a threat before they bothered to ask what kind of threat, and once your mind decides, it starts writing a story that fits the decision. Linda had already decided. Tom had already decided. The rest of the cabin watched this story happen in real time, some in shock, some with phones up recording, because now every injustice has an audience. Jasmine's father, Victor Cole, wasn't at the gate yet. He was a private man, CEO of a renewable tech firm, not someone who sought headlines, but he'd booked that seat for his daughter, and he had a way of appearing exactly where his family needed him. The plane door opened, and Victor walked down the jet bridge like a man who'd trained for boardrooms and battlegrounds. He didn't scream, he didn't shout. He moved with the precise calm of a person who could make things happen with a phone call and a firm look. When he saw his daughter on the floor, wrists raw and eyes half-rolled, something in him quieted his power. He crouched, touched her forehead like he would a fevered child, and for the first time in that cabin authority had a different tone. One that said, this is not just a policy matter. The video was already live streaming. There were thousands watching, so whatever had been hidden in the alloy of procedure was now exposed in pixels and sound. Victor didn't make a scene for spectacle. He lifted the plastic ties off her wrists slowly, and he held those broken pieces up like evidence. "Is this procedure?" he asked, and the room knew the question wasn't only rhetorical. Linda, who'd been so sure, went cold. Tom tried to explain. He stammered about protocol and threats and training, but a nurse from row 3 had already cut the restraints and was trying to open Jasmine's airway. The narrative was changing suddenly. A routine claim of safety looked a lot like negligence, and negligence that almost killed a kid. In the hours that followed, the jet sat grounded an island of scrutiny. Victor called lawyers, called journalists, and made a quiet list of demands, but he also insisted on one thing first. Jasmine needed a hospital. The media inhaled, and what once might have been a he said she said became a mosaic of video clips, witness statements, and a very public reckoning. Linda's assumption had become the kindling. The live stream was the spark. Act 3. Reckoning and Reinvention. Courtrooms have a different smell, not of perfume or jet fuel, but of varnished wood and the weight of people watching history be decided. Linda and Tom thought they were doing their jobs. The prosecution put the video on the screen. The audio cleaned up, and every gasp, every thud, every word was replayed so people could see what the airplane cabin had seen in one frantic minute. The defense tried to sell safety fear and the right to act without knowing every fact, but the footage was harsher than any claim of noble duty. The jury heard from the nurse from the passenger who'd streamed from Jasmine, who, when she testified months later, spoke softly but with a sort of hard-won calm. She talked about the way people's eyes landed on her like an accusation about the taste of carpet in her mouth, about waking up in a hospital bed with wires and a brace, and the memory of a grown man's knee and a sentence in her chest that said, "You are not safe." The verdict was modern and decisive consequences for the people who had mistaken a hoodie for guilt. But this isn't a claptrap for righteous vindication where money and power cancel everything. Jasmine's recovery was brutal surgery therapy, sleepless nights where the past crept back in. She could have let it end her hang-a-sign victim, but she didn't. During her recovery, she turned code into cavalry. She took the system that failed her and made it a shield. Jasmine built a platform, not revenge, not a weapon, but a tool. Passengers could upload verified medical profiles, pre-authorized care notes, and accessibility flags that would be securely linked to boarding manifests. No gate agent could ignore a documented medical need without leaving a digital footprint. The app launched quietly. Then spread families who'd been ignored on flights started using it. Disability advocates pushed it into policy discussions, and airlines embarrassed into reform had to pick sides, adapt, or keep losing trust. By the time the press photo went up, Jasmine heeled in a smart jacket standing in front of a conference banner for Safe Sky, her app company. Linda had lost her job. Tom had lost his badge, and both were facing civil judgments they hadn't imagined when they made what they thought were split-second calls. That's the thing. A split-second decision can cost a career, a conscience, or a life. This story is not about one bad person. It's about a system that lets assumptions override inquiry, and about the small human cost when that happens. It's about a teenage girl who was seen as a problem because she didn't look like first-class material and who turned the pain of being misread into a broader fix for millions. It's also about accountability, about what happens when people in positions of power are forced to answer for the harm they cause. So, where do you land? Was the punishment too harsh? Was it overdue? Did Jasmine become a symbol because she had a father with money who could turn outrage into action, and does that matter? Those are messy questions, and I want to hear your take. Tell me about the time you were judged before you could explain, or about a system that needs changing. Drop a comment right now, argue, challenge, or share your story. If this grabbed you, hit like. It helps real stories like this find more ears. Subscribe if you want more true-life tales that aren't tidy but are carefully told, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into how small moments can change huge systems. What do you think, justice served or overreach? Tell me below.